The hospital room was silent except for the steady beep of monitors. Yenara stood frozen by the door, her hand trembling against the frame, because for the first time in 7 months, Spencer's eyes were open, and they were looking directly at her. His voice came out rough, barely above a whisper, but every word was clear. Your Uncle Theodore, he visited 3 weeks ago, stood right where you're standing now. Yenara's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. You were in a coma," she stammered. "You couldn't have—" He said something interesting. Spencer's jaw tightened, his gaze never leaving hers. She thinks she's clever, refusing to sign. But once that soldier's plug gets pulled, she'll have nothing left to cling to. The color drained from her face. "I heard everything, Yenara." Spencer pushed himself up slowly, his eyes sharp, calculating, burning with quiet fury. "Every threat they made, every lie they told, every time you sat beside me and read to me when you thought I couldn't hear." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over her. "They thought they buried you by marrying you to a dead man, but I'm very much alive, and your family has no idea what they've awakened." The tension in that room was thick enough to choke on. What would you do if the man everyone thought was gone heard every cruel word spoken in his presence? If you want to find out how Yenara ended up married to a comatose soldier and what Spencer does to the family that tried to destroy her, stay with me. But first, welcome back to the Untold Stories. If you're new here, this is the place where we uncover stories of betrayal, resilience, and justice that stays with you long after the video ends. If that sounds like your kind of story, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss an untold story. Now, let's go back to the beginning. The Kensington estate sprawled across 3 acres of manicured perfection. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of silence that hides secrets. The family had gathered in the formal sitting room, and when Yenara walked in, she was dressed simply compared to the designer labels surrounding her. She had learned early that in her family, love was transactional and loyalty was conditional. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to happen. She walked into that sitting room expecting another lecture about family expectations. What she got instead would alter the course of her entire life. Her grandmother, Mother Agatha, sat at the head of the room like a queen on her throne. "Yenara, finally, we've been waiting." "I came as soon as I got your message," Yenara replied cautiously. "What's this about?" Her cousin, Portia, smirked from the velvet settee, exchanging a glance with her brother Edmund. Their mother, Aunt Cordelia, sipped champagne with barely concealed amusement. Uncle Theodore stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. "We have wonderful news, Yenara. The family has found you a husband." The room seemed to tilt. Yenara's stomach dropped. "A husband? I never agreed to any—" "You forfeited your right to choose when you refused Victor Ashford." Mother Agatha's voice cut through the room like ice. "A man of his standing, his wealth, his connections, and you humiliated this family by rejecting him. Victor is a monster. Victor is a business partner worth $50 million to this family. Was until you destroyed that opportunity with your childish tantrum." What Yenara hadn't told them, what she could never tell them, was the real reason she refused Victor Ashford. Behind closed doors, Victor had shown her exactly what kind of man he was. The bruises on her wrist had faded, but the memory of his grip, the coldness in his eyes when she tried to pull away, that stayed with her. And that wasn't all. 3 months ago, Yenara accidentally walked into her uncle's study and seen documents she was never meant to see. Financial records, wire transfers. The family's charity foundation was a front for laundering money, millions flowing through ghost accounts while sick children received pennies. She hadn't said anything, not yet, but Theodore had seen the recognition in her eyes that day, and ever since he'd been waiting for the right moment to neutralize her. This was that moment.
Your new husband's name is Spencer Holt. He's a soldier." Yenara frowned. "A soldier?" Portia burst out laughing. "Tell her the best part, grandmother." Mother Agatha's smile was cold, reptilian. "He's in a coma. Has been for 7 months. No family, no visitors. The military was about to pull his life support." She leaned back with satisfaction. "We are saving his life by giving him a wife. It's charity, really." The room erupted in laughter. Edmund raised his glass. Aunt Cordelia dabbed tears of amusement from her eyes. Yenara stood frozen. The cruelty of it stole her breath. "You can't be serious." "We're completely serious," Theodore said smoothly. "You'll be married by the end of the week. The ceremony will take place at the military care facility where he's being kept." "And if I refuse?" Theodore stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous murmur that only she could hear. "If you refuse, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a thief, that you've been stealing from the foundation. I have documents with your signature on them, documents you've never seen, but will look very authentic to investigators." Yenara's blood ran cold. "You'll go to prison, Yenara, and no one in this family will lift a finger to help you. Or," he straightened, adjusting his cufflinks, "or you marry the vegetable, live out your days in obscurity, and everyone moves on with their lives." Now, before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where every option felt like a trap? Where someone used their power to back you into a corner you couldn't escape? Drop a comment below and tell me about it. Your story might help someone else who's going through the same thing. Now, back to Yenara. That evening, Yenara found her mother in her private room, seated at her vanity, brushing her hair with methodical strokes. Helena had always been beautiful, delicate features, graceful movements, but there was an emptiness behind her eyes that had been there for as long as Yenara could remember. "Mother, you have to stop this. You know this is wrong." Helena didn't turn around. "What I know is that you've always been difficult, always fighting, always questioning. If you had just married Victor like you were supposed to—" "Victor hurt me, Mother. He grabbed me, he threatened me." "Then you should have been more careful not to provoke him." The words hit Yenara like a slap. Helena finally turned, and her gaze was colder than Yenara had ever seen it. "This family has given you everything, a home, an education, a future, and all you've done is embarrass us at every turn. Perhaps tending to a comatose husband will teach you humility." "I'm your daughter," Yenara whispered, her voice breaking. "And I'm a Kensington. That comes first." 4 days later, Yenara stood in a small, sterile room at the military care facility. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. The wedding was everything you'd expect from a punishment disguised as charity. A military chaplain, 2 witnesses from the hospital staff, and a groom who lay motionless in a hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that breathed for him. Yenara stood beside the bed in a plain white dress, no flowers, no music, no family except Uncle Theodore, who watched from the doorway with a satisfied smile. "Do you, Yenara Kensington, take Spencer Holt to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the chaplain asked. She looked at the man in the bed. Spencer Holt, 32 years old according to his file. Strong jaw, brown hair cropped short, a face that might have been handsome before whatever happened to him. His military records were classified. His emergency contacts were blank. He was, in every way that mattered, alone in the world, just like her. "I do," she said quietly. Theodore's voice dripped with mockery. "Congratulations, Mrs. Holt. Your new living quarters are being prepared, a small room adjacent to your husband. You'll be expected to tend to his needs, feeding, bathing, physical therapy. The hospital staff will show you what to do. For how long? Until he dies or until you sign the inheritance documents, whichever comes first. He dropped a manila envelope on the bedside table.
Sign those and you can have your freedom back. A modest apartment somewhere, a small monthly allowance, enough to disappear quietly. And if you don't sign, then you stay here with him until he rots. He left. The door clicked shut behind him. Yenara stood alone in the room, the only sounds the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the soft hiss of the ventilator. She looked at the envelope, looked at Spencer, and she left the envelope exactly where it was. In the days that followed, Yenara's old life disappeared piece by piece. Her phone was disconnected, her bank accounts were frozen, her friends, the few she had, stopped returning calls, no doubt warned by the family that associating with her would have consequences. She was a Kensington in name only now, a ghost haunting the hallways of a military hospital, married to a man who couldn't hear her, couldn't see her, couldn't save her. Or so everyone thought. That first night, she didn't know why she went to Spencer's room after the staff left. She should hate this room, should hate him even, for being the instrument of her imprisonment. But she didn't. "They think they've won, you know," she said softly to his unconscious form. "My grandmother, my uncle, they think I'll break eventually, sign their papers, disappear like a good little embarrassment." She pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself small in the oversized chair. "But I won't. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I won't give them the satisfaction." She glanced at him, at the stillness of his face, the rise and fall of his chest guided by machines. "I don't know who you were, Spencer Holt. I don't know what happened to you, but I guess we're in this together now, both of us forgotten, both of us alone." She reached out and, for the first time, touched his hand. It was warm, human. "So I'll make you a deal. I'll stay with you. I'll take care of you, and I won't let them pull your plug. That's what they want, you know, for you to die so they can call me a widow and ship me off somewhere. But I won't let that happen." She squeezed his hand gently. "We're partners now, Spencer, for better or worse, just like we promised." The heart monitor beeped steadily as she sat there, keeping vigil beside her unconscious husband, two strangers bound by circumstance, isolated from the world. And deep in the darkness behind his closed eyes, Spencer Holt, who had heard every single word, felt something he hadn't felt in 7 months. Hope. 3 weeks passed, then 4, then 2 months. The world outside the hospital walls continued to spin, but for Yenara, time had taken on a different rhythm. It was measured in medication schedules and physical therapy sessions, in the changing of IV bags and the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. And something unexpected began to happen. One morning, as Yenara helped a nurse with Spencer's physical therapy, gently moving his limbs to prevent muscle atrophy, the older woman studied her with curiosity. "Most spouses don't stay this long, you know," Nurse Patricia said. "After a few weeks, they start visiting less. After a few months," she shrugged, "we become the only family these patients have." "He doesn't have anyone else," Yenara replied. "Neither do I, really." "That's what makes you different." Patricia looked at her with something like respect. "The others who come through here, they feel guilty, obligated. You actually seem to care." Yenara didn't know how to explain it, that somewhere along the way, taking care of Spencer had stopped feeling like a punishment and started feeling like a purpose, that talking to him, even knowing he couldn't respond, had become the only honest conversation she had. That night, she settled into her usual chair beside his bed, a book in her lap. "Okay, so we finished The Count of Monte Cristo last week, which, by the way, if you ever wake up, you're going to love. A man wrongly imprisoned who escapes and systematically destroys everyone who betrayed him. Very relevant to our situation." She laughed softly, the sound strange in the quiet room.
Tonight I thought we'd try something different. I found this in the hospital library. It's a book about architecture, the design of everyday things. I used to dream about being an architect before everything. She opened the book and began to read, her voice soft but steady. What Yenara didn't know was that every word was being absorbed, every story, every confession, every quiet moment of vulnerability was reaching Spencer in the darkness where he waited. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't open his eyes or signal in any way that he was still there, still fighting. But he heard her, and her voice had become his lifeline. A week later, Uncle Theodore arrived unannounced. Yenara was arranging flowers she'd picked from the hospital garden when his shadow fell across the doorway. "Still playing house with the corpse, I see." Yenara didn't turn around. "He's not a corpse. His heart is beating." "Barely, and only because machines are doing the work for him." Theodore walked closer, examining Spencer with clinical detachment. "The doctors say there's less than 5% chance he ever wakes. Every month that passes, those odds drop further. Did you come here just to gloat?" He pulled a document from his briefcase. "Sign over your inheritance rights, and you can leave. Not to some cramped apartment, to an actual life, a condo in Miami, a monthly allowance that would let you live comfortably. All you have to do is let go of this stubbornness." "And abandon my husband?" Theodore laughed coldly. "Your husband. Listen to yourself. You've been married to a body for 2 months. This isn't a marriage, it's a morgue with a delay. Get out." "Excuse me?" Yenara turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "I said, get out. This is my husband's room. You're not welcome here." Theodore's expression hardened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to ensure only she could hear, not realizing that Spencer was cataloging every word. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought you were powerless, drop a like on this video. Let's see how many of us have been in Yenara's shoes. That night, Yenara sat in her usual chair, but this time she was crying. "I don't know how much longer I can do this, Spencer. I'm so tired. Every day is the same walls, the same silence from the staff, like I'm crazy for still being here." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "My mother called today. First time in 2 months. You know what she wanted? To remind me that I could still fix this if I stopped being so dramatic. That's what she called it, dramatic." She laughed bitterly. "I used to wonder what was wrong with me, why I couldn't just fit in, be what they wanted, play the game like everyone else. But you know what I realized? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just the only one in that family who isn't rotten to the core." She looked at Spencer's still face. "Sometimes I imagine what it would be like if you woke up. Stupid, right? But I think about it. What your voice would sound like. What you'd say if you could hear all the things I've told you." She was quiet for a moment. "You probably think I'm pathetic, married to a stranger, talking to someone who can't talk back, holding on to hope that doesn't make any logical sense. But you're all I have, Spencer. And maybe that's pathetic, but you're all I have." She reached for his hand and held it. "If you can hear me in there, please don't give up. I know I'm nobody to you, but please, don't leave me alone." In the darkness of his consciousness, a vast, empty space with only Yenara's voice echoing through it, Spencer heard every word. He'd been trapped in this void for 7 months, no sense of time, no connection to his body, only the occasional voice of a nurse or doctor breaking through the silence. Then Yenara came. At first, her voice was just another sound, unfamiliar, unexpected, but she kept coming back. She read to him, talked to him, told him things she'd never told anyone, and slowly, impossibly, Spencer began to fight his way back. He didn't know who she was, didn't know why she was there, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This woman had become his reason to live. "I hear you, Yenara," he thought in the darkness.
I hear everything, and I swear to you, when I get out of here, no one will ever hurt you again." 3 weeks later, the day it happened started like any other. Yenara had just finished reading the morning paper to Spencer, a habit she'd developed, convinced that keeping him connected to the world might somehow help. She was in the middle of an article about a local charity scandal, ironic given her family's own crimes, when she noticed something. His finger moved. Not a twitch, not a spasm, a deliberate, intentional movement, his index finger pressing against her palm. She froze. "Spencer?" she breathed. His eyes opened. Not slowly, like in the movies. They snapped open, alert, aware, immediately finding her face. And in that moment, Yenara saw something that made her heart stop. Recognition. He knew who she was. He'd been listening all along.
The chaos came and went in a blur. Doctors rushed in, nurses ran tests, questions were asked and answered. And then, finally, the room was quiet again. Just Yenara and Spencer. The medical team called it a miracle. 7 months in a coma, less than 5% chance of recovery, and Spencer Holt had simply woken up. His vitals were stable. His cognitive function appeared intact. He was, against all odds, alive. But what the doctors didn't know, what only Yenara was about to discover, was that Spencer hadn't just survived his coma. He'd spent 7 months gathering intelligence. "The doctors say you need rest," Yenara said, still shaking as she sat beside his bed. "That it'll take weeks for you to regain your strength." "Your Uncle Theodore visited 3 weeks ago." His voice was rough but clear. Yenara went still. "Stood right there by the window, told you that once my plug got pulled, you'd have nothing left to cling to." You heard that?" "I heard everything." Spencer pushed himself up slowly, ignoring the weakness in his muscles. His eyes, sharp, calculating, nothing like the vacant stare she'd grown accustomed to, held hers. "I heard your grandmother announce at a family meeting that they were marrying you to a vegetable as punishment. I heard your cousin Portia laughing. I heard your mother tell you that being a Kensington comes before being your daughter." Yenara's hand flew to her mouth. "I heard Theodore threaten to frame you for theft if you didn't cooperate. I heard him mention documents with your forged signature. I heard him talk about a charity foundation that's laundering money." "You heard all of that?" Tears formed in her eyes. "This whole time?" "Every word, every threat, every time they treated you like garbage." He reached out and took her hand, the same hand that had held his through countless nights. "And I heard you, Yenara. Every book you read to me, every story you told, every night you sat here crying and still came back the next morning. Every time you defended me to nurses who thought I was already dead." His grip tightened. "You saved my life, not the doctors, you. Your voice was the only thing keeping me tethered to this world, and I will not let the people who try to destroy you get away with it." What are you saying?" "I'm saying that before I ended up in this hospital bed, I wasn't just a soldier." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I was military intelligence, deep cover operations, the kind of work that involves gathering evidence, building cases, and taking down people who think they're untouchable." Yenara's eyes widened. "Your family thinks they married you to a helpless invalid. They have no idea that they handed you the one thing they should have feared most, a partner with the skills and the motivation to tear them apart piece by piece." Now, pause. Let's take a moment to appreciate the beautiful irony here. The Kensingtons designed the perfect prison. They married Yenara to a man they thought would never wake up, never speak, never fight back. What they actually did was give her an ally, a trained operative who'd spent months memorizing their crimes, their weaknesses, their secrets. They thought they were burying her. Instead, they armed her. If you're enjoying this story, take a second to subscribe to the Untold Stories channel. More stories like this are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Later that night, Spencer laid out the plan. First, I need to know everything you know about the charity fraud. Dates, amounts, any details you remember from those documents you saw. I only saw them for a moment. Theodore caught me. A moment is enough. Close your eyes. Tell me what you remember. She did, and as she spoke, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, Spencer filed away every detail, account numbers, dates, the name on the wire transfer, a shell company called Harbor Light Holdings. Good, that's a start. Now, I need you to do something for me, something that's going to feel counterintuitive. What? When word gets out that I woke up, your family will come to assess the situation. When they do, I need you to act defeated, broken, like you finally accepted your fate.
You want me to lie to them? I want you to let them underestimate us. The more harmless they think we are, the more careless they'll be. And careless people make mistakes. A slow smile crossed Yenara's face, the first real smile he'd ever seen from her. You want to use their own arrogance against them. It's what I was trained to do. 1 week later, word of Spencer's recovery reached the Kensington estate. The family gathered once again, but this time the mood was less celebratory. So he's awake, Mother Agatha said, her lips pressed thin. That complicates things. Theodore waved dismissively. Not necessarily. I visited them yesterday. The man can barely stand without help. His memory's fragmented. He doesn't even know what year it is. And Yenara? Aunt Cordelia asked. Broken. Finally. She sat there holding his hand like a devoted wife, but the fight's gone out of her eyes. Give it another month or two and she'll sign whatever we put in front of her, just to escape. Portia snickered. Maybe we should invite them to Sunday dinner. Let everyone see what happens to women who don't know their place. That's actually not a terrible idea, Mother Agatha mused. A family dinner, a show of reconciliation. It'll look good for our public image, and it'll remind Yenara exactly what she's given up. Theodore smiled. I'll send the invitation myself. While the Kensingtons plotted their petty victory, Spencer was making calls of his own. He held the phone to his ear, speaking quietly in the dim hospital room. Marcus, it's Holt. Yeah, I know. Reports of my death were slightly exaggerated. He listened for a moment, then smiled grimly. I need a favor. Actually, several favors. You still have access to financial investigation channels? Good. I'm sending you some account information. Shell company called Harbor Light Holdings. I need to know where the money's coming from and where it's going. A pause. No, this isn't sanctioned. This is personal. But Marcus, these people tried to destroy an innocent woman. They've been stealing from charities meant to help sick children, and they stood over my hospital bed and talked about pulling my plug like I was yesterday's garbage. Another pause. Then, thanks, brother. I owe you. Not everyone was willing to wait for the family's careful plans to unfold. Victor Ashford, the man Yenara had refused to marry, the man whose rejection had started all of this, still hadn't accepted defeat. He appeared in the hospital corridor one afternoon, blocking Yenara's path. Yenara, what a pleasant surprise. She tried to step around him. He moved to block her. I heard your husband woke up. Must be awkward, being married to a vegetable who suddenly has opinions. Let me pass, Victor. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something that thought it was seductive, but was only threatening. You could have had everything, you know. Money, status, a man who actually wanted you instead of a charity case in a hospital gown. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. It's not too late. Marriages can be annulled, especially marriages to invalids. Yenara tried to pull away. Let go of me. Or I'd let go of my wife if I were you. Victor spun around. Spencer stood at the end of the hallway, in a hospital gown, leaning on an IV pole, looking every bit the invalid everyone assumed he was. But his eyes told a different story. Victor laughed. You must be the husband. I'm not impressed. You mentioned an arrangement with Theodore Kensington, something about getting Yenara one way or another. That sounded like a threat. So what if it was?
So I want you to remember this moment. Remember exactly what you said and how you said it, because when everything falls apart, and it will, I want you to know that you did this to yourself." He held up his phone, showing the recording app that had been running the entire time. Victor's face went pale. "Have a nice day, Victor. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again."
The Kensingtons loved their pageantry. Crystal glasses, candelabras, a 12-seat mahogany table that had witnessed 3 generations of secrets, betrayals, and calculated cruelty. Tonight, they were putting on a show, the reconciliation dinner, designed to parade Yenara's defeat in front of the family while maintaining a veneer of respectability. What they didn't know was that they were walking into a trap. Mother Agatha smiled with practiced warmth as Spencer and Yenara took their seats. "Spencer, we're so delighted you could join us. Your recovery is nothing short of miraculous." Spencer played his part perfectly, leaning on a cane, his voice uncertain. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm still not quite myself, but Yenara insisted we accept your invitation." "And how are you finding married life?" Theodore asked with barely concealed amusement. "It must be quite an adjustment waking up to find yourself with a wife you never met." "Oh, I feel like I've known Yenara for a long time," Spencer replied. "She has one of those familiar presences, like we were meant to find each other." Yenara hid her smile behind her wine glass. "How romantic," Aunt Cordelia said dryly. "Although I imagine the circumstances were less than ideal, being in a coma, having strangers make decisions about your care." Spencer's expression remained innocent. "You'd be surprised how much you can pick up even in that state. The brain is remarkable. Sounds, voices, conversations happening nearby." He let the words hang in the air. "The doctor said I might have heard things even if I couldn't respond." Theodore's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "That seems unlikely," he said carefully. "Doesn't it?" Spencer agreed. "But then again, I remember the strangest things. A conversation about charity foundations, for instance. Something about Harbor Light Holdings." The table went silent. "Must have been a dream," Spencer said lightly, returning to his meal. Over the following weeks, Spencer and Yenara executed their plan with surgical precision. They attended family events, always appearing weaker than they were. Yenara played the defeated niece, no longer fighting, seemingly broken. Spencer played the recovering invalid, confused by names and dates, harmless as a house cat. And while the Kensingtons relaxed their guard, Spencer's contacts worked. One night, in their small apartment, Spencer spread documents across the kitchen table. Marcus came through. Harbor Light Holdings connects to 14 offshore accounts. The money trail goes directly to Theodore Kensington and 3 other family members, including your grandmother. What about Victor? Deeper than we thought. He's been laundering money for the family for years in exchange for business contracts. The harassment, the threats, those are just the bonus. The real connection is financial. So what happens now? Now we give them enough rope to hang themselves. The family charity gala is next week. Every major donor, every business partner, every person they've ever tried to impress, all in one room. Yenara's eyes widened. You want to expose them there? Spencer met a gaze. I want to destroy them there. The Kensington Foundation Gala was exactly what you'd expect from people trying to look generous while being anything but. Champagne towers, silent auctions, and speeches about children who would never see a dime of the money raised in their names. Mother Agatha stood at the podium, accepting applause for her tireless philanthropy. She didn't notice Spencer slipping toward the tech booth. She didn't see Yenara positioning herself by the main doors, and she definitely didn't see the federal agents waiting in unmarked cars outside. And so, thanks to your generosity, we will continue to provide hope to children who have none. The screens behind her flickered.
Her speech was replaced by documents, bank records, wire transfers, a spreadsheet showing millions flowing out of the charity and into private accounts. The room gasped.
Spencer's voice came through the sound system, calm and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but I thought you should know exactly where your donations have been going. Mother Agatha's face went white. Theodore lunged toward the tech booth only to be blocked by hotel security. The Kensington Foundation has stolen over $12 million in the past 5 years alone, Spencer continued. That money was meant for children with cancer, for families who couldn't afford treatment. Instead, it bought vacation homes, jewelry, bribes to local officials. The screens changed again, showing Victor Ashford's name on multiple transactions. And here's their business partner, Victor Ashford, who helped them move the money offshore in exchange for contracts and, as recorded in this audio, the promised delivery of a woman who rejected her marriage proposal. The recording played, Victor's own voice threatening Yenara in the hospital corridor. The ballroom erupted in chaos. And then the federal agents walked in. Each Kensington fell in a way that mirrored their cruelty. Mother Agatha, who had orchestrated the humiliating marriage, watched her social standing collapse as society turned its back on her. The very people she'd spent decades impressing now looked at her with disgust as she was led out in handcuffs. Uncle Theodore, who had threatened Yenara in Spencer's hospital room, was arrested in front of his business partners, the same people he'd been trying to impress for years. His carefully constructed reputation crumbled in seconds. Victor Ashford, who believed himself untouchable, faced charges that would destroy not just his reputation, but his entire business empire. The recording of his threats played on every local news station by midnight. And Helena, Yenara's mother, who had chosen family reputation over her own daughter, was left with nothing. No position, no allies, no one willing to stand beside her as her world collapsed. 1 month later, morning light streamed through the large windows of Yenara and Spencer's apartment. The Kensington Empire was ashes. But for Yenara, the story wasn't about destruction. It was about rebuilding. She sat at a drafting table, sketching designs for a community center, her first real architectural project. The inheritance she'd once been pressured to sign away was now legally hers, and she decided to use it for something the family would have hated, actually helping people. Spencer walked in with 2 cups of coffee. The contractor confirmed the groundbreaking for next month. You're really doing this? We're doing this, she corrected him. I couldn't have done any of it without you. You could have. You were already fighting back before I woke up. You just needed a partner. She looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had been a stranger thrust into her life as a punishment, who had become her closest ally, her partner in every sense of the word. Can I ask you something? Anything. When did you know that you could trust me, that we were on the same side? Spencer was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, soft, genuine, nothing like the calculated expressions he'd used during their operation. There was a night, about 3 months into my coma. You'd been crying. The nurse had told you that my chances were dropping, that it might be time to let go. But you came back that night anyway. He set down his coffee and moved closer. You held my hand and you whispered something. You said, I don't know if you can hear me, Spencer, but I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Even if the whole world gives up on you, I won't. Because you're the only person who's ever needed me just as I am. Not for my name, not for my inheritance, just me. Yenara's eyes filled with tears. She remembered that night. She didn't know he could hear her. That was the moment I knew. That was the moment I decided I was going to wake up, no matter what it took. Because you needed someone who saw you for who you really are. He reached out and took her hand, the same hand that had held his through all those dark nights. And I wanted to be that person. On the wall of their apartment, a newspaper clipping was framed and displayed. The headline read, Kensington family convicted in multi-million-dollar charity fraud. Next to it hung an architectural rendering, a community center with the words Holt Community Center at the entrance. The Kensingtons designed a prison when they arranged that marriage. They meant to bury Yenara in obscurity, chain her to a man who would never wake up and forget she ever existed.
Instead, they gave her the one thing she'd never had, a true partner. And in trying to destroy her, they destroyed themselves.
And that, my friends, is how you turn a punishment into power. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me where in the world are you watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And while you're at it, what did you learn from Yenara and Spencer's story? Was it the power of patience, the importance of having someone in your corner? Or maybe just that the people who underestimate you often hand you the tools for their own destruction? Let me know in the comments. If this story moved you, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss another untold story. We've got more tales of betrayal, resilience, and sweet, sweet justice coming your way. This is the Untold Stories channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.